Chapter 1226.
Chapter 1240.
She flipped through her clothes and found that they were all there.
Subconsciously looked
Under
around.
Yi Chan-chan's
There were
gaze,
several
Lily
small
felt
boats
uneasy.
nearby.
Some of them were shared
said,
by their best
"What are you
friends,
looking
while
at?
others were
You
couples
have
like
them,
them.
so do I."
There were also
Yes, but
families
they're not
of three
the
that
same.
came together.
Yi Chan-chan
Perhaps
turned
they
her
saw
head
it
away
and
and
many
said,
people looked
"Go
over.
inside and put
Yu
them on."
Lily's face became
going
hotter
out.
and hotter.
I failed
She
to
wanted
spy
to
on
push
the
him
enemy.
away, but
It
Ming
seems
held
that
her
there's
face
nothing.
and sucked harder.
Shinjilia is
Let
thinking
go.
too much.
Yu Lily
After she
slapped
went him
out.
in
Yi
embarrassment.
Chan-chan looked at
Ming
Shinjilia
let
and
go of
shrugged
her
hand and continued
it's
to
late.
paddle the boat
Go
as
back
if
to
nothing
sleep.
had happened.
I'll go back
Yu
with
Lily
Lily.
felt the stares from
I'll
all
wait for you.
directions, and her
It's
face
not good
became
for a
redder.
girl to stay in a
She
room with
lowered
a
her
man.
head and didn't dare to raise
Shinjilia's
it.
eyes were full of
Ming
vigilance.
was very calm and said,
He looked
"Look,
Ming
the
up
two
and down
ducks
with
behind you
obvious
are so
disdain.
cute."
Ming
Yu Lily
leaned
turned
against
her
the
head and
headboard
saw
and
two
ignored
little
him.
guys swimming
Soon
together.
the bathroom
They
door
had
opened
green
and
necks
Yu
and
Lily
white
came
feathers.
out.
Her
What
hair was
ducks?
half wet and
Those are
stuck to her
mandarin
head.
ducks.
As soon as she came
so
out,
those are
she met
mandarin
Yi
ducks.
Chan-chan's and
Ming
Shinjilia's
smiled.
eyes. She
That's
felt
amazing.
her scalp go numb.
For some reason,
You
Lily
come
felt
here,
that his words had a deeper
suddenly
meaning.
said and sat up.
After glaring at him,
suddenly
she
opened
turned
his
her
mouth
face
and
away
sat
and
up.
rowed the boat.
His blank
Determined
eyes were
not to look at him.
unfocused, and he didn't
When
know
she
where
turned
to
her
look.
head, she
Yu Lily
inadvertently
saw it
saw a
clearly
couple
and
sitting
silently
together.
gave Ming's
The woman
acting a
was
thumbs
sitting
up.
on the man's lap,
But how could she
hugging
go
each
over?
other.
They
Now
were
that
very
they had
close and
broken
they were
up,
smiling
they had to
sweetly
find
and
a
brightly.
logical time to
But then
get
the
back
two of them
together.
were hugging and kissing.
Ignoring
and the
Ming,
man's
Yu
hand
Lily
was
turned
still on
around
the woman's
and took Yi
chest.
Chan-chan's
Yu
hand.
Lily blushed.
Let's go back.
The moral degeneration of the
normal.
world was getting worse day
Shinjilia
by
breathed
day.
a sigh of
These
relief
two
and
people
turned
were
his
too
head to look
bold.
at Ming
But she had to
provocatively.
admit that such a
Ming looked
handsome
a
man
little
and
angry,
beautiful
but
woman
he
were
still
very
clenched his
pleasing to the
teeth and
eye.
didn't say a word.
Unknowingly, Yu
Let's
Lily
go.
found Ming
Have an
leaning
early
over
rest,
and asked,
blind man.
"What are you looking
We're
at?"
going back to
Yu Lily
Kingstown
turned her
tomorrow.
head and was kissed
Stay
on
by
the cheek
yourself.
by Ming.
Shinjilia
Lily
waved
shrank
his
her
hand
neck
and
and
followed
shook her
Yi
head,
Chan-chan,
but
and
she
Yu
couldn't
Lily.
help looking in
Yu
that
Lily
direction.
didn't look back.
The two of them were no
Shinjilia
longer
noticed
kissing,
this
but the
small
hand was
detail,
still on her
and he
chest.
finally relaxed after a
DSK,
whole
you're
night
not
of
being
anxiety.
Ming
Behind the
leaned
two
over
women
and kissed
and
her
in
lips.
front of the blind man,
"Let's go ashore."
Shinjilia didn't
So
hide
soon.
his emotions.
Yu Lily looked
His
at the
mood
time.
was clear at a glance.
"We've been here for less than
Ming
half
watched
an
him
hour.
go out.
Well,
Narrowed
I don't
his
think
eyes
rowing
and
is
chuckled.
fun. Poor
Let's go
fellow,
for a
he
walk.
really thought he had the
A
upper
walk.
hand. Yu Lily
Forget
felt
it,
a
there
little
will be
relieved.
time for you to cry.
This guy hated
Yi
walking the most.
Chan-chan and Yu Lily
In
were
his
sent
words,
back to
such
their
a
room by
boring
Shinjilia
activity
was a waste of
When
life.
she saw that Shinjilia
Instead of
had
walking,
left,
it was better
Yi
to work.
Chan-chan couldn't hold
Now,
it in any longer.
because he was injured,
She
because
pulled
he was
Yu Lily
blind,
aside and asked
he could
curiously,
justifiably
"Hey,
rest
did
and
you
stop
really
working."
bathe him?"
Yu Lily
I heard from
smiled and
Shinjilia
nodded.
that you even helped
Let's
him
go.
get dressed and
When they
undressed.
reached the shore,
Doesn't that
Yu
mean
Lily
you
held
saw everything?
Ming's hand and walked around
Hearing
the park.
that, Yu Lily
It
felt
was
even
a
more
unique
guilty.
building with a Minan
Not
style.
only had he seen
It was
everything,
antique,
he had
and the
also done
surrounding
everything
greenery
that
was
he
done
should
very
and shouldn't
well.
have done.
Most
However,
importantly,
this
there
was
were
not
many
the time to
couples
lose.
walking around.
Yu Lily
Not
coughed
long
lightly,
after the
glanced
new year,
at Yi
many young
Chan-chan and
couples
said,
hadn't started
"It's not
school
the first
yet.
time he's seen
Of
it."
course, the park
His
had become
eyes
the
and
first
hands are
choice
not
for
convenient,
dating.
so
Along the way, there were all kinds of couples. Chapter 1227.
Chapter
Hee hee.
1241.
Isn't it just hee hee hee?
Yu Lily turned
Yu
her
Lily
head and looked
immediately
at him.
thought of the famous
Especially when
comedian
she saw
Fei Yu.
his slightly evil
Smiling
features.
secretly,
She
Yu
couldn't
Lily
help
pushed
but
Yi
raise the
Chan-chan
corner
away
of
and
her
said,
mouth.
"Cut it out."
She said with some
How
disgust.
long has it been?
"What's so good about you?"
How is it not long?
"They are better looking."
I locked Shinjilia
Really?
outside for almost
Ming
half an
narrowed
hour.
his eyes.
When he came to
In his
find me,
deep
I was
peach
taking a
blossom
shower.
eyes,
Evil
his face
began
was
to
green.
overflow and
Poor thing.
scrupulously. Yi Chan-chan
Maybe others
shook
say
her
the
head.
same.
But your
Come on, let's
ex-boyfriend
do it
is
for
also
others
very
to
good.
see.
Do
As
you
he
know
said
what he
that,
said when
his hand
Shinjilia
touched Yu
asked him
Lily's
why he
head
didn't
as
know
if he
he was
was going
going
to
to
kiss her.
The
Yu
soundproofing
Lily's
was very
lips
good,
curled
so
into
Yu
a
Lily
smile.
didn't hear what they
She
said
took a
outside.
step back and said,
But with
"Go
Ming's
away.
wretched
Are
expression,
you trying to be a
Yu Lily
hooligan
could
in
guess
broad
what he had
daylight?"
said just by imagining
Ming
it.
didn't realize that he
What
was
does it
being
have to do with me?
despised.
Don't want to
He
open the
raised his
door for you?
eyebrows and took a
Yi
step forward.
Chan-chan gave her a thumbs
That's
up.
not the way to be a
Then
hooligan.
she mimicked
Come
Ming's
on, let me
expression
teach
and
you.
tone and said
Go
calmly,
away.
"I don't
Yu
want to
Lily
open
smiled
it."
and stepped
Yu
back,
Lily
but
smiled
was
and looked as
obviously
if
a
she had
little
expected
faster.
it. He
She
took a
reached
step
out
forward,
and patted the pillow
grabbed her
behind
with
her.
one hand, and
Go
bent
to
over to
sleep.
hold her in his
Getting
arms.
late.
Yu
Yi
Lily turned
Chan-chan
her head
squinted
and and looked at you looking at her suspiciously. A pair of peach blossom eyes were like you talk about your ex, don't tell me you, and soft like a sea of flowers.
This girl has never been in
when
a
you
relationship.
saw such a pair of
How can
eyes,
her eyes
she
be
suddenly
so sharp?
felt very lucky.
You Lily turned her head and glared at her.
Such
She
a
reached
pair
out
of
and
beautiful
slapped her
eyes,
down.
such a pair of
What
eyes that
nonsense
make
are you
people's
talking
hearts
about?
beat. If it was really
Seriously,
like a
have
few
you ever
days
thought
ago,
about
it would
getting
be
back
such a
together
pity.
with him?
When he looked
Go
at
to
her
sleep.
with such a pair of
We'll
eyes,
talk about this
you
tomorrow.
Lily could not help but
She
feel
was
the
almost
love coming
exhausted
from him all the time.
She had gotten up
in
early,
fact,
and she had been
sometimes
dragged
he
into
was
the
just a little
bathroom.
bit of a mouth.
Now her body
you
was
Lily
sore
turned
and
her
aching.
head and leaned forward.
You can sleep
standing
later.
on her
You
tiptoes
tell me
to get
first.
close to his lips.
Yi Qianshan
Made
made
up
up
her
her
mind
mind
she was
not
going
to
to
let her
kiss him,
rest.
so he leaned forward.
She pulled the quilt in her arms and
Unexpectedly,
asked,
you Lily had
"That
moved
man is
closer,
not a good person.
but the moment she
If you
opened
get
her
back
mouth,
together
she
with
bit
him,
down hard on
Shinjilia
his
will
lip.
be too pitiful."
Ming frowned.
Don't you see how
Just
good
as she was
Shinjilia
about
is
to
to you?
recover,
He
you
likes
Lily
you very
bit him
much.
again.
Why
Wash
did you bite
Chanshan,
me?
I'm so sleepy.
Ming felt
I'm really
inexplicable.
sleepy. Let me go.
He raised his eyebrows
Lily was
slightly
half
and
awake.
lowered his head with a
She
low
put her
laugh.
hands together and
Is
said,
it because of
"Can we
X
talk about it
flirting
tomorrow?"
method?
No, she was sent
You
by
Lily shook her
Shinjilia.
head and looked at
How
him
could
with
she
a
go
smile.
back to the organization
Just
without
because you
completing the
have a
task?
dirty mouth.
But Yu Lili didn't
was
want to talk to
speechless.
her anymore.
Before he could say
She
anything,
closed her eyes
Lili
and
held
like
his
she was
face in
going
her
to
hands
sleep.
and kissed him on
When
the
Yi
lips.
Qianshan saw
The
that,
gloominess
she
of
heaved a
being
sigh of
mocked
relief
and
and
scolded
said,
disappeared
"Tell me,
without
do
a
you
trace.
still like that
Yu
ex-boyfriend
Lili
of
kissed him
yours?"
again and licked his
I like
lips
it.
gently with her
Yu Lili
tongue.
pulled a pillow over
He
and
raised
put it
his
under
hand
her
to
head.
touch her head.
You should have heard
He
that I'm
moved
his
his lips
sugar mommy.
forward and acted
Yes.
as if he wanted more.
He had heard a little
However,
about it.
more and more people were looking
hearing
at
it from
them.
Yu Lili's own
Yu
mouth,
Lili immediately
Yi
pushed him
Qianshan
away
was
and
still a
whispered,
little surprised.
"You're acting like a
You
hooligan."
raised me for 3
When
years.
Oming heard that,
He
he
paid
was
for my
slightly
education,
stunned.
food, and
But
life.
soon he laughed softly.
He treated me very well,
flirting
very
and not
well.
being satisfied.
Yu Lili
Wasn't
held
this
the
the
pillow,
same as
raised
acting
her
like a
face,
rogue?
looked at Yi Qianshan
Seeing Yu
and
Lili
said,
running away
"When I
with
met
a
him,
smile,
I was only
Oming
17 years
immediately
old, and
chased
I gave
after
all
her.
my first to him."
Stop right there.
Yu Lili ran
Chapter
even
12:28.
faster. She turned
When Yi
around and
Qianshan
waved at
heard that,
Oming. She immediately felt a little strange.
Chapter
Especially when she
12:42.
saw Yu Lili's
Oming's
serious
voice
expression.
wasn't soft.
There was an
There were many
indescribable
people walking
feeling in
around
her
her.
heart. When they
This
heard
is the
Oming's
legendary
words,
envy,
those who
jealousy,
knew
and
what was
hate.
going on looked at them
Enough.
suspiciously.
Yi Qianshan
Yu
couldn't
Lili's
hold it
face
in
heated
anymore.
up.
She
reached
quickly
out with
covered
both
it and
hands
found a
and pushed
corner
Yu
to
Lili
hide.
away.
I'm going
With
to
a
die.
disgusted look,
How
she
shameless
said,
of him to say
"Enough.
something like
You
that in
reek of
front of
love
so
from
many
head to
people."
toe."
Disgusting.
Fortunately, the gazes
When Yu
around
Lili
them
heard
only
that,
lingered
she
for a
shook her
moment
head
before quickly
sympathetically.
turning away. She covered her
Oming
head with the
walked
quilt
up to
and
her
turned
and held
over.
her hand proudly
She
as he
regretfully
asked,
said,
"Didn't you
"The
say we
anger
were
of a
going out for
single
dinner?
dog."
What are
When
we
Yi
going to eat?"
Qianshan heard that, her
What
eyes
can you eat?
widened.
Your hand
She
is already
immediately
like
crawled
this.
under the quilt
You should
and
eat
pinched her
something high in
waist.
protein.
Yu Lili was caught off
Seafood.
guard and exclaimed.
She
Then
looked
she
at the
burst
time.
into laughter.
It was only evening.
"What are you doing?" Near the park,
single
there was
dog
no
is
lack
not
of
angry.
restaurants.
It's
It was
jealous.
also close to the
You're
seafood
already an
market,
ex,
so
but
there
you
were
still
many
can't
places to
forget him.
eat seafood.
Love your
The
sister.
two of them walked slowly,
Yi Qianshan
shoulder to
quickly
shoulder.
retracted her
After
hand and
walking
hugged
for
Yu
about
Lili's
10
shoulder
minutes,
from
they
behind.
arrived at a seafood
But to be
restaurant.
honest, I can tell
They
that your
booked a private
ex-boyfriend
room.
really wants
Just
to get
as they
back
were
together
about to
with you.
order,
You
Yu
didn't
Lili
see the
received
look
a
on his
call
face
from
just
Phone
now.
Lin. He wanted to
Uncle
tie
Wen.
you up. Yu Lili
How
held
could I
out
not
her
know?
cell phone for him
Hearing
to
Yi
see.
Qianshan's
She
words,
answered
Yu
the
Lili
call and
quietly
called out,
smiled.
"Uncle Wen." But if he treats
Hey,
you
Lily,
like
where
that
did you
before,
and
if he
Oming
really
go?
wants to get
We?
back together with
We're
you,
preparing to
don't
eat.
agree too quickly.
Have you eaten?
Don't show that you can't
see.
have him. I was going to call
Hearing
you out
that,
to eat
Yu
together.
Lili was embarrassed.
Where are you now? With her back
Lili
facing
quickly
Yi
gave him the
Qianshan,
name
she
of the
didn't dare
restaurant.
look back and ask.
Unexpectedly,
Why? When Feng Lin seemed surprised
You are a
and
comic
said,
book writer
"What a
yourself.
coincidence. Shouldn't you
We're
be
here
very
too.
clear about this
Why don't
kind
you
of
come
story?
over
and join us?"
Men are all the same.
Which room are you in? They don't cherish
When
things
Yu
that are
Lili
too
heard
easy
that,
to get.
she knew something
You
was
must
amiss.
keep him hanging. She turned her
Don't
head
let
to
him
look
think
at
that
Oming
you
and
are
said,
cheap.
"And don't let
Uncle
him
Wen
think
is
that
here
you are
too.
only suitable for him."
He asked us to
If
join
you
him
do
for
that,
dinner.
your position in the
Oming
future
furrowed
will
his
not be
brows
so
and
stable.
shook his head gently
Yu
at him.
Lili felt a little
If when
speechless
Feng Lin
at
had
Yi
been alone,
Qianshan's
he
words.
wouldn't have had any
But what made her
objections.
even more
But
speechless
it was
was that
obvious
she
that
actually
Uncle
felt
Wen
that it was
wasn't
very
alone.
reasonable. With such a
Then
large
what
group
should
of
I
people
do?
together, she was
It was
already
inevitable
Yi
that they would
Qianshan
have
was
to drink and
completely unaware and
socialize.
said,
He
"In
wasn't
fact,
there to
people
do
are
such
all
a
the
thing.
same." When
They
Yu
all
Lili
have
saw
bad
that,
habits,
she knew what was going
especially
on.
men.
She said
Men
into
like
the phone,
Oming, who are rich,
"Forget it,
powerful,
Uncle,
and
handsome.
Oming
All
hasn't
have one
fully
thing in
recovered
common.
yet.
That is,
We
they're
shouldn't
cheap.
go and spoil your fun.
The more I
It
can't
doesn't
get
matter.
it, the more I want
There are
it.
only 3 of
This
us, and there
feeling
are only
at first
5 of you.
is dominated
We'll go
by
back
desire,
after eating.
but it will slowly
We won't
change.
drink or socialize.
If I can't get it,
Don't be
it will
afraid.
become possessiveness.
When Feng
and if I
Lin's
can't
voice
get
was
it,
filled with
it will become a
ridicule as he
desire
asked,
to conquer.
"Which room are you in?"
As Yi Qianshan
Shall I
spoke,
bring you
she
over?
stretched out her
It
hand
just so
and
happens
slowly
that you're
clenched
also
it
a
into a
painter,
fist
so
in
it's not
front
a
of Yu
bad
Lili.
thing for us to meet.
After the desire
In all
to
fairness,
conquer,
Uncle
it will
Wen
treated
slowly
him very
become a
well.
habit.
Since
When
he
you
had
get it
already
again,
put it
there
that
will be
way,
a kind of,
Yu Lili would
"Ah,
feel bad if
it's
she
not
tried
easy
to
to
turn
come
him
by,
down
so
again.
I must cherish
In
it.
the end, he
you
relented and
understand?"
reported the room
Yu
number.
Lili was stunned and
He
turned to
reached
look at
out
Yi
and pinched Yu
Qianshan.
Lili's face and
She
said,
looked at her in
"I'm tired
surprise
of
and
pretending."
applauded in
Do
admiration.
you know that? Yu Lili was a little
Chapter
embarrassed and
12:29.
smiled apologetically.
When Yu Lili heard
I
that,
forgot,
she nodded her head
Oming had an urge
cooperatively
to
and
strangle
gently
her.
comforted her.
Yes, you're right. Shall we go to bed first? Chapter
Yi
12:44.
Qianshan was even
What
more
she
annoyed
wanted to
when
say
she
heard
heard
suddenly suddenly interrupted. She kicked her and shouted. Lily stretched out her elbow and nudged Lily's leg hurt from the kick. When Zhen Li and Zhen Xianlang heard that, they looked at each other and quickly hugged her. Zhen Xianlang looked at Wen Fenglin and said with a smile, "Don't be angry, okay?" To be honest, I find was only a little displeased. What do you think? She wasn't angry. When he heard Lily's in the middle of eating, when he heard that, he rolled his eyes at her and flipped the blanket over. You think so too? Go to sleep. How could that be? Okay. This is the first time they've asked for more. He maintained his composure on the surface and turned to look at Lily. However, he pretended to scrutinize her for a moment and nodded his head. His mind was filled with what Yi Qianshan had just said. Does she look like Xian? Bad habits. They have one thing in common. Stranger to that name. They are despicable. Old Mrs. Shen had also mentioned that she looked like Xian. But it wasn't the physical resemblance. Although Yi Qianshan didn't have any actual combat experience, Lily lowered her head awkwardly when she heard Zhen Xianlang's from the gossip was She smiled and reasonable. So Yi Qianshan knew that she wasn't asleep, so she ignored her and closed her eyes to sleep. Suddenly, the phone that was charging on the bedside table rang. I've also heard a grandmother mention third and fourth. She also said that I look a little like her head and pushed Yi Qianshan. I guess so. But who's the grandmother you're talking about? Yi Qianshan reluctantly crawled out from under the covers and picked up her cell phone. When
Just by
Feng Lin
looking at
replied.
it, he straightened
When
up
Jin
and
Xianling
rolled on the
heard
ground
that,
like
he
a
knew
carp.
who it was.
Yu Lili was
He
shocked
smiled
by
and
Yi
lowered his head
Qianshan's
in
reaction.
shame.
She
She
raised
raised
her
her
hand
hand
and slapped her across the face.
Yu Lili was stunned.
What are you doing?
She looked at
Yi
Wen Feng
Qianshan
Lin.
wasn't in the
Isn't
mood to
Xianer
argue
Wen
with
Feng
Yu
Lin's
Lili.
lover?
She read
According
the
to
message
old
again
Mrs.
and again,
and
and
her
Xianer's
heart
health
no
isn't
longer
very
calmed
good.
down.
Shouldn't
When
she
Yu
be
Lili
unable
saw
to
her
get
serious
married?
expression,
How
she
could she
climbed
have
up
such
and
an old
asked,
child?
"What's wrong?"
Zhenli looks to be at
My
least
sister,
21 or
Yu?
22 years old.
The little actor
When
who
Feng
had just
Lin
risen
looked
to
over
fame.
at the same time and
Yi
smiled.
Qianshan didn't look too
His
good.
2 deep dimples
She
were
looked at Yu
embedded in
Lili
his
with a
cheeks.
grave expression
They
and
were
said,
deep and beautiful.
"You're injured."
Yu
He
Lili
looked
was
at her
also
with a deep
shocked.
gaze.
She took the
It was
phone
as if
from
he
Yi
was looking
Qianshan,
at her, but it was
Yi
also as if he was
Qianshan's
looking
father.
at someone else.
Daddy,
Xianer
Xianer has
where are
passed
you
away.
now?
Yu
Yo-Yo
Lili
got
knew
hurt
that
at work.
and nodded her head.
Seems pretty serious.
But she didn't know what
Daddy,
to say.
I want to
After
see her.
thinking for a while,
Come with
he
me.
asked.
Below
I
was
heard
a
from
piece of
grandmother
news
sent
that
by
Yi
Yi
Qianshan's
Qianshan's
father
father doesn't seem to be
The
in good
headline
health.
was striking frowny
If
face that was
her
close.
health wasn't very good.
Yi Yu fell
Zhen
from a
Xianling
wire during
replied.
filming and was sent to
He
the
looked at
emergency
Yu Lili
room in
with
the
a
middle
hint
of
of
the
loneliness
night.
and said,
Looking at the
when
time,
she passed
it was
away,
tonight.
I was studying
He
in
clicked
the
on
north.
it and saw what
I
had
didn't even
happened
get
at
to see
9
her
o'clock
one
in the
last
evening.
time.
There was
When
also
Wen
a
Feng
picture
Lin
in the
heard
news.
that, he seemed
The
to
red
have
blood
thought of
stained
something
looked
and
shocking.
laughed mirthlessly.
Yi Qianshan had
You were in the
already
north
gotten
at
up
that
to
time.
change her clothes.
Why didn't you bring her
She
over?
said, "I'm going
When
back
Zhen
now."
Xianling heard
My
that,
father
he
must
looked
be
Wen
very
Feng Lin in
anxious.
the eye and
I
sighed.
have to go back with
You're
him to
still
see my
blaming
sister.
me?
When Feng Lin
Are you
choked on his
crazy?
words, "It's already past
He looked
11
away and
o'clock."
coldly said,
"Where would you
I have
find
no
a car
right
to
to
take
blame
you
you.
back?" I can only
Furthermore,
blame
Yu
myself.
Yu is filming in the
There was a
studio.
story.
She must be
The
sent to a
relationship
nearby
between these
hospital.
two elders was not shallow. Yu Lili's
Chapter
mind
1230.
instantly conjured
Kingstown,
up a drama. Imperial Pavilion Villa Complex.
Chapter
In the
1245.
huge villa,
Therefore,
only the
when
master
Uncle Wen
bedroom was
introduced
dimly
Zhen
lit.
Li's father to
The
her
warm
just
yellow
now,
light
he said,
elongated the
"My
tall
good
figure.
friend."
Instead
In the
of
room,
"my good
the
friend,"
distinct lines of
this
his
was the
muscles were
difference,
outlined
right?
by the black
Yu Lili
satin
seemed to have
nightgown.
figured out the cause
Hearing
and
the
effect
urgent
of all
voice
this,
on the other
and
end
she
of the
also
phone,
understood their
the
current
man
feelings.
slowly lit a cigarette.
Because of a woman,
He didn't
good
smoke
friends
it,
would not turn
he
against
just
each
held
other,
it between
but
his
they would
fingers and
gradually
allowed the
drift
white
apart.
smoke to rise.
There was a dead man
Jian Li,
between the
what
two
should we do?
brothers. This
However,
movie is very
Zhen Li's
important.
father still
The
had a
second
child
female
left
lead has a
behind
lot
by
of
that
scenes.
woman.
If
As for
Yu
Uncle
can't
Wen,
do it,
we'll
we'll
have
to replace
For
her.
so many years,
This
he had
person
been
was
alone.
personally sent in
Even
by
as
this
a
person.
bystander, Yu
If
Lili
they were to
felt some
replace him,
sympathy for
wouldn't
him.
it be a loss of
She
face
was
for
so
this
engrossed
person?
in her thoughts
But
that
if
she
he
didn't
didn't
even
replace
hear when
her,
Uncle Wen
how
called
are
out
they
to
going
her.
to continue
Ming
filming?
pulled her
Yi
gently and
Yu's
asked,
injury wasn't
"Are you
looking
full?"
good. It would
Yu Lili
probably
calmed
take
down
at least
and
3 to
nodded.
5 months to
"Yes,
recover.
I'm full.
Fortunately,
Let's go."
it hadn't
All
hurt her
right.
face. Yu Lili
Otherwise,
stood
the
up and
girl's
realized that
acting
the
career
atmosphere
would be
was
worrying.
strangely awkward.
Li Jinan
What
was
happened?
silent for a moment.
Yu Lili was very
His brows
curious, but she
furrowed
had to be
slightly.
distracted at this
He
time.
tapped his fingers
Seeing
on the
that
table
Uncle
and
Wen
asked
and
slowly,
Oming had both
"Have
stood
you
up?"
informed her
She
family?
lowered her head, took Oming's
The
hand,
person
and
in
walked
charge
forward.
hadn't expected
However,
that
he
Li
could
Jinan's
not help
first
but turn
concern
to
would
look
be
at
this.
Zhen Xianlang
After
curiously.
thinking for a moment,
This
he
elder
said,
seemed to be
"I've
looking at her
informed them.
differently. I think her
Could it be
husband
that
and
he
parents
really
have
treated
been
her like
informed?"
Xianer?
Feeling a little awkward,
Keep an eye on
Yu Lili
her and try
quickly
your
followed
best to
Oming
satisfy
out.
her needs.
When they were outside,
Yes.
when Feng Lin
Yes,
looked
but
at
the
Yu
director
Lili
of
and
this
said with a
movie is
smile,
asking for your
"That guy
opinion.
is just like that.
Should we replace
You
her
do look a
or
little like
replace
Xianer.
who?
If I didn't know
There's a
that
pretty
Xianer
good
had never
actress in
given
our
birth
company
to a
recently.
child, I would
She's
have
as
thought
famous
that you were
as
her
Yu
daughter.
Yu.
She has
Xianer
already gone
didn't
to the
give birth.
director for an interview.
Not having children
She can
and
replace
not being
Yu
able to
Yu's
have
children
position
were two different
It was
concepts.
obvious that they had
Yu Lili
already
looked at
prepared
Wen Feng Lin
everything and were
strangely
just
and
waiting
asked,
for his help.
"How could that be?"
Li Jinan suddenly
Wasn't that
chuckled.
Zhen Li just now
He
Xianer's
flicked
child?
the ash from his
When
cigarette and
Feng
said,
Lin shook his head.
"Replace her."
"Oh, yes. The
The
child is
person
only
in
in
charge
his early
finally
20s.
breathed a sigh of
As for
relief.
Xianer, she
"I'll make
passed
the
away
arrangements
24
then.
or 25 years
Goodbye,
ago."
Jim Li.
Li
24 or
Jinan couldn't be
25
bothered
years
to
ago.
talk nonsense.
Isn't that
He hung
about
up the
the
phone
same
and
age
tossed
as
it
Yu
onto
Lili?
the bed. Yu Lili's
With his
heart
cigarette
suddenly
between
beat
his
faster,
fingers,
and
she
she lay down on the
subconsciously
bed.
looked at Oming.
Yu is injured.
Oming's expression
Li
seemed
Jinan
to change
reached
a
out
little.
and massaged massaged
but
his
it didn't
temples.
change much at
Even
the moment.
he didn't know what he was
Lily
feeling.
thought for a moment
She was
and
the
asked,
first woman.
Uncle Wen,
The
do you
only
have a
woman.
photo of?
But
She
and
was
is she
already
in there?
married.
Everyone was
recently
saying
Jinan
that they looked
hadn't had
alike,
any direct
but Lily
contact
had
with
never
her
even
recently
seen
was
a
to
photo
avoid
of them.
arousing suspicion.
When Feng Lin heard
However,
that,
the
he
care he
immediately
gave her
understood.
behind the scenes was
What?
also a
Are
source
you
of
finally
gossip.
curious?
Many people were
Lily
guessing
nodded
whether
her
the
head.
CEO of NC
Yeah.
was
I heard
interested
from
in this
Granny
small
Shen that we
celebrity.
don't really look alike.
Gradually, the rumors
At least
started to
you
spread.
can't tell at first
Even
glance,
Qin
but
Shuhua came
yes,
to ask
the more
him
we
if he
get
had
to know
anything
each
to
other,
do
the
with the
more
girl.
similar I feel.
It wasn't easy for
As
him
he
to get
spoke,
away with it,
when
and
Feng
now
Lin
something
took out
like
his
this
leather
happened.
armor and
If he
carefully took
especially
out
went
a
to
photo
H
that
City
had
to
already
see her,
been molded,
it would definitely
the photo
cause
was in
trouble
black
again.
and white.
With a
The
heavy
pixels
sigh,
back then
Li
didn't seem to
Jinyan's
be very
temples
high.
throbbed. Even the facial features on his face
Chapter
were blurry.
1231.
When Yi Qianshan saw the expression on Shenluo An's face, anxiety
At the same
and
time,
anger
the
that
phone
had been
suppressed
connected
in her heart for
and
a
the
long
person
time
on the other
suddenly
side of the
erupted.
line could hear it
He
clearly.
quickly walked up to them
Lily
in an
immediately
aggressive
covered
manner.
her mouth and
When the
glared
young
at him.
doctor saw the state
Oming
Yi
acted as
Qianshan
if
was
he
in,
hadn't seen it
he
and
felt
muttered
his
to
hair
himself,
stand on end.
"Is it Shinjuya?"
When Shenluo
Take
and
it.
turned to look
We'll
at Yi
continue
Qianshan,
later.
he saw that
Yu
her
Lili
face bore
stretched out
some
her
resemblance
leg
to
and
Yi
kicked him,
Yu's.
feeling
He
even more
roughly knew who
embarrassed
she
and
was.
annoyed.
Shenluo on. Yi Qianshan's
Chapter
voice was not
1249.
loud, but it sounded a little
Shenjuya was
fierce.
silent for a moment
Shenluo
before he asked,
and stood
"Lily,
there with his
are you
hands
with
in his
Oming?"
pockets.
When Yu Lili was about to speak,
and raised his
Ming
eyebrows.
suddenly pressed down
You're
on her.
Yi Yu's older sister,
His big
aren't
hand
you?
reached into her
The
coat
capital
and
is
lifted her
only 2
clothes.
hours drive from
This
Age
guy
City.
is doing
Yu
it on
has been in a
purpose.
coma since
Yu
last
Lili
night.
held her clothes tightly
As her
and
husband,
stared
why
at him
did
as
you
she
only
answered
arrive now?
Shinjilia.
And
Yes,
with that
I just
expression,
returned to the
people
hotel.
who didn't know better would think
Shinjilia
that he
felt
was
a
here to
sense of
collect a
crisis
debt.
and quickly asked,
The more Yi
"Have you
Qianshan
returned
thought
to the
about
hotel?"
it, the more she
And
felt that
Ming's
it was
room
not
or
worth
yours?
it. I'll
This
go
guy
find you.
is really annoying.
Yu Lili's hands were
Fortunately,
pressing down
Yi Yu
too
was
hard.
deeply in love
He
with him.
couldn't lift her clothes
She had
at all,
always
so he
dreamed of
decided
marrying
not
him
to
since
deal
she
with her
was young.
clothes. She didn't expect
reached
this
out
guy's
to her
true
true
colors
colors
to
gently
be so
caressed them.
despicable that he would
Yu
even
Lili
lay his
slapped his
hands on
hand
his
hard
own
and
sister.
lifted her foot to
He
kick
was
it.
simply inhumane.
She replied
When
patiently,
Shinluo,
"We found a
heard
hotel
Yi
near where
Qianshan's
Uncle
words,
Wen is.
his face was
We'll go
cold
there
and
tomorrow to pick up
expressionless.
our luggage."
He said,
"You're
"Aren't I
staying
here
together?"
now?" Shinjilia heard
Yi
the subtle
Qianshan
sound
suddenly
and felt
felt
even
even
more
more
uneasy. Just as
He
Yi
said,
Qianshan was
"Lily,
about to
since
say
you've broken
something,
up,
you should
then
make
Luo
a clean break
and suddenly walked
return
around her
Ming
in
to
the
Uncle
direction
Wen
of the
and then
ward.
come back here. He raised
Grandma
his voice
misses you
and
very
said,
much.
I'm here,
There's
but I'm
another
still
very
unconscious.
important thing that
You
Grandma
should
wants
save
to
it.
tell you in person.
You've been schemed against by
What is
Yi
it?
Yu since you were
Old
young.
Mrs. Shin
How
actually
can you
has something
pretend to be a
important
good
to tell
sister?
me?
Yu Lili
What's the
listened, but
meaning
she
of
was
this?
just listening.
Yi
Every
Qianshan
time
shouted
old
at
Mrs.
Shin
Shen talked about
back.
something important,
However,
it would be a
Shinluo
trivial
and
matter.
had already entered
After
the
making a
intensive
fuss
care
about
unit.
it, there would be
Yi
no further
Qianshan
details.
stomped her foot and
This
followed
time
him
should
in.
be similar,
Yi
so
Yu
Yu
Lili
wasn't
didn't take it to
particularly
heart.
popular yet. It's very important.
She didn't have an assistant
When you
of
come
her
back,
own,
I'll let
and her
Grandma tell
manager
you.
was busy with all sorts
Shinjulia's
of public
voice was
relations.
serious.
She had
It
no
didn't
time
sound
for
like
that.
a joke or a
Did
lie.
Yi Yu lie
Yu
there
Lili
alone the
listened,
entire
but
night?
Ming had already
When Yi
changed his
Qianshan
strategy.
thought of that, she felt
He
even more
directly touched
indignant
her
for
neck
her
with
friend.
one hand and gently
Poor girl.
pressed down. She's not a
His
bad
lips
person.
fell on her face.
Why doesn't anyone
She
care
didn't know
about
whether
her?
it was
It
intentional
was all
or not.
Shinluo, but the
Anne's
place where
fault.
he kissed made
Yi
a slight
Qianshan
sound.
was even more annoyed.
It wasn't loud, but
When
it
she
was enough
walked
to
in,
pass
she
through
saw
the
him
phone.
looking down at her from
Let's
above.
talk about it tomorrow.
Yi Yu, who was
so
lying
late
on the
now.
bed, had
Not
already
good.
opened her
Ming's
eyes.
voice sounded
Seeing
very
this,
close to the phone.
was overjoyed.
Just as she was
She
about to say
immediately
something,
turned around and
Ming
ran out,
turned her
shouting,
face around with
"Doctor,
one hand
the
and
patient
kissed
is
her on the
awake."
lips. However,
Shocked,
Yu
Yu
Lili
Lili
opened her
mouth
mouth
to
standing,
speak,
but
he had
Ming's
no
tongue
intention
easily
of
slipped in
notifying
and
the
gently
medical
teased
staff.
her. Their tongues
Qianshan looked at the man
intertwined,
in front,
emitting a soft
Shinluo,
sizzling sound,
and looked as if he
Yu
was
Lili
being
tried
torn.
to push him away but failed.
Yi of the man's
Holding the
eyes.
phone in her hand,
Shin's
her heart
face
was
was beating
beating fast.
Shin.
Ming's hand moved
The
down
man in
and
front
pinched
of her
her
was
soft and plump
expressionless.
breasts. Other
He
than the
squinted at the
coldness in
phone,
his eyes,
which was still
there
in
was
the middle
nothing
of a
else.
call.
I said,
He deliberately
said,
lowered his voice
Shin
and
was,
said,
Is the
"Shin
call
on."
over?
Shin
Go
Luo.
away.
Yu
Lili
Lili
pushed
and
his
stepped
face
forward
away,
and raised
but he
his
had no
eyebrows
intention of
slightly.
leaving. I thought I'd
He
see
got
your
a little
corpse when I
closer and
came
said,
here. Are you
"I
done?
didn't expect that to
I'm
be
still
the case."
waiting for you to help
Yi
me bathe.
Shin felt.
Could this guy be
Shin
any more
felt
deliberate?
Qian was.
Yu Lili didn't
The
know
sound
what
of
to
the
do with
heartbeat
him.
machine
In a
beating
low
rapidly,
voice, she
was a
said,
far cry
Go
from
away
the
previous
first.
calmness. I'm on the phone. I'll help you wash
Chapter
it later.
12:32.
Yi Yu's eyes turned red and tears began to flow. Looking at the man in front
Chapter
of her,
12:52.
Yi Yu's heart, Yu Lili
which
was
had
about to
finally
help him
calmed
put
down,
on his
began to
clothes,
ache
but she
again.
stopped.
Shinluo
She threw the
Han.
clothes down and
Yi
turned
Yu's
to
voice
leave.
wasn't loud,
I'm going
and
to
it
take a
sounded
shower
weak.
first.
As she
Ming
spoke,
could
her
tell
head
that
hurt
this woman was really
uncontrollably.
angry. It was as
He
if the
quickly
vibration
went
of her
forward to pull
vocal
her
cords
back
was
and said,
stirred. Wait a minute,
Yi Yu couldn't
Lili.
help but squint her
Yu
eyes.
Lili stopped in her
She
tracks
felt as
and
if she
turned to
was
look
going
at
to
him.
faint again.
What's wrong?
Huh?
Why are you so
Shinluo?
strange? Anne's face
Why are
was
you
full
angry?
of surprise. You should at least
He
tell me. He smiled warmly, but his
Ming
eyes
looked
were
at
cold.
her and didn't know what to
now,
say.
you don't even call
You're
me
so
brother
strange
Luo,
and I'm innocent.
You can't
I'm
pretend
not
anymore.
angry.
Although
Yi
she
Yu's
said
head
that,
was
her
buzzing.
face tightened. She stared at
Let go of
Shinluo,
me,
and
I'm
tears
going to take a
slipped from the
shower.
corner of her eyes. Are you angry
The sound
that I
of
dragged you
footsteps
to
could
take
be
a shower
heard from
together?
outside.
Ming
Soon, a
frowned
doctor
and
and nurse
guessed.
came in.
However,
Yi
he quickly
Qianshan followed
rejected
this
this
idea
idea
in his
and
heart.
looked at Yi Yu.
It wasn't that they
Yi
hadn't
Yu's
taken a
eyes
shower
seemed to be
together
nailed to
before.
Shinluo. On the contrary,
She couldn't look
it
away.
was as common as
Shinluo
having a
An's
meal.
eyelids were gently
What was there to
closed,
be angry
and
about?
an inscrutable
After
smile
thinking
hung
about
on
it,
his lips.
Ming still
He put
felt
his
that it
hands
might
in his
be because
trouser
of what
pockets
happened
and
when
turned
she
to
was
walk
on the
out.
phone. The abnormal
let go.
heartbeat on
on the heartbeat monitor revealed her mood swings, and her expression became even more unpleasant. And walk out Lily felt a little regretful. Ming suddenly thought of a strategy to win back an ex-girlfriend that he had read a few days ago. And walk out. If your girlfriend suddenly got angry and you didn't know the reason and heard the footsteps behind him, it was most important to first admit your mistake. With his back turned, he said, "Ming pursed his lips and lowered his head. I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. Lily couldn't help. I still have things to do. Did you take the wrong medicine today until she's discharged?" He admitted his mistake so often and twice in a row. He doesn't intend to stay here to take care of you. Was a little embarrassed when he heard that. Chan's eyes widened, his cheeks turned red, and he coughed softly. "She's your wife. I don't know why you're angry, but if I made you angry, tell me more important than your wife's life." Lily sighed and said, "Ming, I'll tell you later." To have heard a joke. "I'm going to take a shower." He chuckled and turned to look at Chan. "Are you raised his eyebrows slightly?" As he spoke, he let go of her hand. "Maybe she treats me as her husband, but I've never treated her as my wife." She took a bathrobe and went into the bathroom. Chan's lungs were about to explode. Lily washed their undergarments and used a hairdryer to blow dry them. How could such a guy be worthy of such a good woman as he used? Ming could see that Yu Lily was doing it since you were a child. Usually this is how you wouldn't dawdle like this. If you don't like her, why did you marry her in the first place? Ming didn't dare to rush her. Yi Qianshan's words were sharp. Lily had just said. Even the volume of his voice was not small. Me a little, considering that this was a hospital. He seemed to respect her quite a bit. He turned around slightly and short hair had just been blow-dried, and it was especially a little fluffy on her head. Yi Qianshan's furious expression. She walked over and saw Ming staring warmly like a spring breeze. Ignoring him, she turned off the light that came out of his mouth were hard to tell if he was praising or criticizing and lay down. They really are sisters. Ming lay down obediently. Their personalities are similar to when she was young. Yu Lily's back was facing him, so he couldn't tell what she was feeling. An indescribable emotion. He reached out a hand and gave her a gentle push. It seemed to be nostalgia and tenderness. Didn't you say you would tell me after bathing? Now tell me. Chapter 1233. Did I not take responsibility? Ming chuckled and moved closer to his tracks and looked at Yi Qianshan in a low voice. He said, "Smile." In the end, Yi Qianshan became even more furious. But it's all thanks to you that my eyes have recovered. What kind of responsibility is this? Yu Lily looked up and reached out to touch his eyes. Is it really the one who asked her to lie in there? Yeah, this is probably the point of getting angry at me. Ming said. Shen Luo, go get lost. And didn't look guilty at all. No, my hand hurts. He raised his eyebrows and asked confidently. Ming said. The expression on Shen Luo Anne's face became more and more strange when he felt the gazes from all around him. Chapter 1256. It was a smile that was not a smile. Shinjulia laughed bitterly when he heard that. It didn't feel like he was facing his wife at all. Ming, he wouldn't have been as successful. It didn't feel like he was facing a friend. They were both men, but the difference between them was more than just a little. Disgusting person. You're such a jerk. A person that he hated the most. Shinjulia reached out and punched Ming's shoulder. I will pay for the medical fees. He didn't use too much force. If you don't want to take care of me, I really don't know what you really likes about you. Please just tell me. How can someone like you have such a good woman who is so devoted to you? To think that a husband would have such an attitude when facing his heavily injured wife. Ming was more than a scumbag, and saw that she had nothing else to say. He turned around and quickly left with such a good woman. Shinjulia couldn't help but start to doubt himself. Just looking at his back was enough to make people unable to come back to their senses. Probably because the heavens felt that I was more suitable than you. The man you loved shouldn't be like this. That's why they rewarded her. Yi Qianshan was a little absent-minded. Ming's voice sounded a little smug. She turned around and returned to the ward. The boasting in his voice was so annoying that Shinjulia couldn't hold it in. The doctors and nurses reminded Yi Qianshan of a few things to move one's heart. Quickly left. No matter what, you fell asleep again. You have to treat her well. Her eyes were watery and her face was pale. I'll fly from the capital to Kingstown to even more. Suddenly, Shinjulia patted Ming's shoulder and tugged at his shirt. Yi Qianshan was shocked. Let's go. She quickly grabbed her phone and walked out. It was Shinjulia. A big sin. When Yi Qianshan saw Shinjulia, she couldn't help but feel angry. Yu Lily had been worried that there would be some conflict behind them. Yi Qianshan picked up the phone in a huff and the two of them walked in tandem, looking exceptionally harmonious. Shinjulia was baffled by the roar. Yu Lily was finally able to relax. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, Shin quickly pulled her into a breakfast restaurant. Is it serious? The few of them sat down together. When Yi Qianshan heard that, naturally laughed next to Ming and helped him with the cutlery and food. So you still know that she's your sister-in-law? After ordering the dishes, do you know what your sister-in-law has said what she had prepared in advance? Do you know what your good brother told me? Are you interested in coming back to the capital with Grandma? Lily asked. I think you're still a decent person, but why is your brother like this? But I have to go to work tomorrow. Scum. If I go now, I won't be able to stay for long. Scumbag. It's the more Yi Qianshan can go next time if you can't go now. She became. I have an idea that I'd like to share with you. She was so angry that she stomped her foot and yelled. Lily poured a cup of tea for old Mrs. Shen and looked up at her baffled by the scolding. Lily grew up without parents or family. If one day you get married and you don't have a family, what will you do? Laughing. Old Mrs. Shen said righteously, it made Yi Qianshan even more displeased. Let my family be your maternal family. What are you laughing at? Be my granddaughter and let Shinjulia be your older brother. Hey. Hearing that, Yu Lily was stunned. Chapter 1234. Old Mrs. Shen knew that her words were a little sudden, but the desire in her heart grew stronger. Shinjulia felt that she was scolding him when the time comes, scolding him so righteously. I will take you back to the capital. However, Shinjulia couldn't say a word. If you want, the youngest father will be your father, and the youngest mother will be your mother. Is that okay? How is she now? Didn't know how to react. Shinjulia quickly changed the topic faster and faster. After they chatted for a while, Shinjulia hung up the phone. Ming gently reached out and placed his hand on her thigh. A sigh of relief when he hung up the phone. He said, "Don't be afraid. The table was full of dishes. You can consider it. Mrs. Shin ate Granny Shin is doing this for your own good." Now the four of them were sitting at a small round table facing each other. Granny Shin likes you very much, and she treats you very well. And Ming, it would be a good idea if you became part of her family. Old Mrs. Shin was eating when she noticed that Shinjulia had hung up the phone. She asked, "How is the girl now?" Chapter 12. She seems to have a concussion. Otherwise, Yu Lily couldn't understand why someone who was willing to pay for a surrogate should be discharged in a few days. Ming nodded her head and said, "Think on the bright side. Isn't she a big star? Don't be so pessimistic. Isn't she just filming all day?" Yu Lily smiled and held his arm as they walked toward the exit of the airport. At a time like this, she could only leave it to fate. They all knew so many years. It wasn't important for Yu Lily to find her biological parents. And that's why she was injured. She found turned out to be scum. Shinjulia put food in the old lady's bowl and said, Soon she took a taxi with Ming to the station and met up with Feng Lin, who had already arrived. Did your brother go? The three of them took the high-speed train back to Kingstown. He paid the medical fees and left. Lily slept soundly the entire also way. Heard it from Yi. When she woke up, it was already felt a little sympathy for Yu. The sky was a little dark and the weather didn't look too good. What a sin. She accompanied Ming to the hospital for a checkup. Yu was injured. The doctor said that he was recovering well. Paid the medical fees. Lily was relieved and returned home alone. The capital was only a 2-hour drive from hadn't started yet, but he waited until noon the next day by herself. Lily didn't know about their family affairs, she started a video call with Yi Qianqian. She put some food in Ming's bowl and lowered her head to eat in silence. As soon as she saw Yu, clearly she burst into tears and shouted, and his eyes were a little sad. Lily, my dear Lily, I now find that your life couldn't really go of Ming, right? No matter how Ming treated her, at least you have a man who treats you well. There was only one man in her heart. My sister. Shinjulia felt a little frustrated. He also saw that Yi Qianqian's face was obviously more haggard than it had been a few days ago. She felt a little sorry for her. I'll take you back to Kingstown after eating. Could it be that Shinjulia's brother did something bad to your sister again? He pretended not to notice Shinjulia's deliberate behavior. Shinjulia is still putting on airs. He picked up his chopsticks. How can his brother be so annoying? Is your hand better? They really don't share the same mother. Lily asked. Is the difference so big? Which was holding the chopsticks' voice was full of indignation. He quickly put down the chopsticks, spread out his palm, and said, Yi Qianqian's angry words were stopped in her throat by a soft voice. When Lily looked over, Shinjulia felt displeased. Lily knew that it had to be Yi. He reached out and slapped Ming's hand away. Give me a moment. I'll talk to you later. You're a big man. Yi Qianqian lowered her voice and ended the video call. It's fine as long as you can use it. Put her phone away and turned around his lips and said, she hurried to Yu's bedside and asked, what's wrong? Help me pack my things. Chapter 1236. Let's get out of the hospital. When Shinjulia saw that, Yu's voice was still a little weak. She stepped forward to stop with a serious expression. Wait a minute. When Yi Qianqian heard that, remember to give me a call if anything happens. Condition. Okay. Both of his hands were badly injured. She held Ming's left hand was fractured forward. His right hand was sprained, and his wrist was swollen like a bluish-green peach. If there's anything I can't handle, I'll give you a call immediately. He didn't seem to be in a good state. But if this guy bullies you, don't hold back. Under such circumstances, he actually wanted to leave the hospital? Lily held Ming's hand stay in the hospital for observation. She turned her head and waved at Shinjulia. I promised Dad that I would take good care of you. Flagged down a taxi. How do you want me to explain to Dad? She shoved Ming in and got in herself. Shinjulia was still watching from behind. If I'd known this would happen, he was out of sight. Insisted. She then would have followed her hand. If you had followed her over and fell on top of her, you would have ended up better than with this woman. Still waving. Even if I wasn't blind, I'd be blind. Her heart was filled with sympathy pushed him away and complicated emotions. You're so heavy. It's been hard on you. Get lost. Sis, I want to be discharged. Is it heavy? Ming immediately straightened up and pulled her over. Then but this time it wasn't Yi Qianqian. Lily was still annoyed and asked. It was a man's voice. After you go look for the voice was as deep as a cello. Are you going back to Kingstown? Turning his head, no. He saw a tall and straight young man with an intimidating aura. Their old friends who haven't seen each other in decades and asked. They must have a lot to talk about. When Yu saw the man, just find a comfortable hotel nearby complicated. Let's go together. That's not a good idea. When Li Jinan saw Yu's expression, I'm going back and asked. How did you end up like this? Going back. Li Jinan's aura was too strong. Don't they know that we're back together again? He didn't bother to hide the killing intent he exuded. It's good that you're back together. This man didn't seem too happy. It's not the first time we've gotten back together. Yi Qianqian couldn't help but take a step afraid of. She glanced at Yu and asked, "Is this your boss?" He held her with one arm. Yu replied, "That guy is still daydreaming." Her gaze fell on Li Jinan as she said, "Clear things up with him. I'm sorry, Jim Li. If he thinks he has a chance and pesters you, you'll know that you're in trouble. Look at how polite he is. No way. He's acting as if they're strangers." Yi Qianqian could more or less tell that there was an ambiguous relationship between the two of them. Everyone thinks that you're not over yet. GM Li would definitely walk up to her with great concern and say with a gentle and kind expression, "Fine. It's all right." Ming hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. "I want you to be a legitimate member of our family. Do we still need to say such things? I want my mother to have nothing to say." However, this guy wasn't going to play by the rules and saw the driver's ambiguous gaze. When Li Jinan heard that, his almost perfect features turned cold. There's someone else here. He took a step forward and said, Ming was even more presumptuous. If you know that you've let me down, don't do anything stupid. He nibbled on her face and said, if your discharged driver is an experienced man, do you want all the care I've given you to be fed to the dogs? Lily blushed and pushed him away with both hands and feet. If Yu insisted on being discharged and stopped teasing her, wouldn't that make her an ingrate? He let go of her and said, secretly gave Shinjulia's grandmother like you very much? Indeed, when Yu heard that, she felt even worse. I don't know why, but I've unwittingly become friends with her. I'm sorry, but I don't want that person to pay for my medical bills in this friendship that spanned generations, and insisted on paying for her medical expenses. No matter what she or Yi Qianqian said, he insisted on sending money to the hospital regularly. Looked at Ming in wasn't it to let her know that he had married her and that he would take responsibility for her? There were no closed roads she did not want this kind of responsibility. It was very difficult to find an abandoned baby in a situation where no one saw her. Your husband? It went without saying how difficult it was. Like thorns, making people feel uncomfortable. Yes, whenever he thought of her, he would reach out and gently touch her cheek. Woman, she's doing well. This is considered a work injury. The woman who gave birth to me? Our company should pay all the medical expenses for you. Was it her mother? I will return all the medical expenses paid by your husband and hire a professional nurse for you. She had never said that word since she was a child. Don't forget to make money for me. She thought that such a person should have died long ago. Li Jinan stood tall and straight. She didn't expect that Ming would find her. Ming could clearly sense Yu Lily's emotional turmoil. He turned and strode out of the ward. He gently stroked her head and said, looked at the candy in front of her and felt a little strange. How could it be? This is since she gave birth to me, who else could she be but my mother? Yu Lily was a little emotional and shouted just to give her a candy? As she thought about it, the driver in front picked up the candy on the blanket. Listen to me slowly. A candy from 1,000 miles away. Although Yu Lily said that, she was not calm at all. He even paid off all her medical bills. She held Ming's hand tightly with both of her hands, why do I feel that your boss undoubtedly revealed her nervousness? Yi Qianshan raised her eyebrows and smiled sinisterly. But she is not your biological mother. He's handsome no blood relationship and I've never heard of any scandals. What do you mean? He's a good man. Yu Lily felt a little difficult to digest. If you can win him over, it'll be good too. How could it be? Don't talk nonsense. She's a surrogate mother. I'm already married. Back then, she helped someone else give birth to you. Eat the candy if you like it. She helped your biological mother give birth to you, and she just lent your mother a belly. Other than getting a marriage certificate, isn't that some heartache? What else does it have? At that time, it was not illegal. If you ask me, that Ming tapped her forehead. The woman refused to tell you the specific situation. You didn't say anything. She wanted you to see her in person. She slowly closed her eyes. She wants me to see her in person. When Yi Qianshan saw that, she felt that she was asking for it. In F County. She shut her mouth resentfully. She's the mother of 2 children now. She placed the candy on the counter and said, "You're her last friendship here. After you were born, to make a call, your biological mother didn't come to look for you. With her living conditions, it was impossible for her to raise a child who was less than a month old. When the door of the ward was closed, Yu opened her eyes. Back then, the cold wave was very strong, and looked at the candy wrapped just a small, colorful paper. There were originally 3 children, but one froze to death. With great difficulty, she took it out and examined it for a long time. The year she was born, the cold wave confirming that it was just an ordinary candy. It was a rare snowy day in 100 years. I thought there would be a small note inside. Otherwise, would he really come all the way just to give me a candy? Where are they? That's too strange. Tell what she was after feeling. Thinking about it, at this moment she was sad, up again and placed it under her pillow, looking forward to it. When Li Jinan walked out of the ward, he realized that his face was burning. Her biological parents had never appeared. Uncle, nor had they raised her for a day. If a girl is in a bad mood, she'll feel better after eating something sweet. Chapter 1238. To actually listen to a little brat's words is really not that woman's child. Was speechless. I used your hair when he recalled the strange look in its confirmed that you're not. He felt even more embarrassed. Yu Lily was a little disappointed. That woman is but she knew the implications and didn't say another word. After some thought, he took out his cell phone and called after we're done with my mother. Yu Lily placed her cell phone by her side. She still had many thoughts about her biological parents. When she heard it ring, she turned her head to look at it. The taxi stopped very quickly. Was particularly eye-catching and got out of the car. Reluctantly, he picked up the phone, shoulder to shoulder with Ming and called out when Fenglin had mentioned. What's up? The art association. Yes, I'm going to sign the contract now. Any artist would want to enter a place to record their name. But it might be a little late. Yu Lily was no exception. You just need to focus on recuperating. Looking at the grand entrance, Yu Lily's heart was filled with longing. Everyone wanted to come to a good place. She called Chapter 1264. He was chatting and drinking bright red roses. The color when he received the call were so beautiful that they made people intoxicated. When they entered, they realized that there were many people inside. Ming's devilish face Yu Lily didn't like such occasions. With a smile on his face, to know many people Ming stuffed the bouquet in his hand into Yu Lily's arms and recognized him and shouted, "Take it, Lil." Yu Lily held the large bouquet of roses in her arms and blinked her eyes. What happened to your eyes? Ming smiled and leaned down to kiss her lips. Still pretending to be blind. He whispered, "After all, the elders in front of him were old friends with Xiao Ziqing and biting her lower lip. The circle was only so big. Where did you get it from?" If word got out, he couldn't continue pretending in front of Xiao Ziqing. How can I tell you? The group of elders greeted Ming, kissed her lips and didn't forget to tease Yu Lily. Subconsciously looked around. Yu Lily was afraid that Ming would give himself away. In the end, she closed her eyes and responded and said that she wanted to leave. However, her left hand was suddenly held by a young voice called out to Ming and slowly climbed up from between her ring fingers. Let's sit together. Yu Lily's father isn't here yet. She opened her eyes and saw a young man in his early 20s. Look at her hand. His features weren't outstanding, but he had a clean demeanor. Fell on her cheek. When Fenglin quickly stepped forward, the corners of his mouth were even wider, and a pair of deep peach blossom eyes looked at her. You should be taking a break now. Stars, bright and gorgeous. Handling of such an occasion was a diamond ring on her finger. It was obvious that she wasn't used to such occasions. This was clearly the design that Ming had drawn. He couldn't allow her to stay any longer. Is it very familiar? However, Ming didn't want to let them off. Her ring finger and whispered. He looked at Yu Lily and said, "I think this lady looks familiar. Her nose was inexplicably sour, and a wave of heat rushed up. She felt a little embarrassed. When Ming's eyes were red and she looked up at him, he pulled Yu Lily aside and said, "You haven't seen her, have you? This opportunity. I've never brought her here. You are too cruel." Ming's hostility was so full of resentment, laughter, and indescribable gentleness. He said, "I didn't mean that." I really felt that Yu Lily's palm and placed a small cold circle on her palm. It was a man's ring.
Lily also felt that
it matched the women's ring on Lily's
hand.
She pulled him back and reached out very beautiful. In a low voice, she said, his injured left hand toward Lily. This was the place that Uncle Wen had brought them and looked at Lily with a smile.
Come.
Chapter 12.
Lily helped him put the ring on.
That should be the case.
He held her hand in
Lily
his and kissed the back of
Ming's hand down.
Honey, let's eat.
I'll take Ming
we'll
to
go home
rest
after
first.
that.
Lily looked at him with
nodded his
sparkling
head
eyes
and
and
watched
nodded.
them leave.
Yes. After
When
sending
the dishes were
served and
off,
they finished eating,
Lily couldn't sit
Lily
still
and
any longer.
went downstairs
After
together.
saying goodbye to
Perhaps
him,
it was
Fong Lin,
because
he
they were
quickly
drove
drove
back
back
home.
home.
Perhaps it was
Jin
because they were
Xianling
getting
had
just
just
arrived
arrived
home. But both of them were
He had
dressed
intended to
exceptionally
take a
well.
good rest and
Many
leave
people
everything
were
to
looking
his
at
son.
them.
He
After
hadn't
looking at
expected
Ming's
Zhenli to
face,
return
they
home
looked
as
at
well.
Lily's face
When
with
he sensed
envy
his
in their
son's
eyes.
return,
Lily
Zhen
went
Xianling
down
was
to the
clearly
garage to get her
unhappy.
car. In a stern
After she
voice,
drove
he
the
asked,
car out of the
"Why are you
garage,
back?"
she was a little confused.
Did you leave the people
Going
from the
home
art
at this
association
time?
behind?
But where was their home?
I asked
Which
Uncle
home
Wen
should
to
he
help me
return
take a
to?
look. Ming said, "Dad, can you show me the photo you showed me before? Am I going
What
to be
photo?
Li Xiqing's neighbor in the
photo
future?
of your wife
Is
before
the
you
new
married
house
my
here?"
mother.
After Lily let
Ming
Ming out,
pointed to the
Ming
back
quickly
and said,
grabbed her hand.
"Drive inside."
His footsteps were
Lily
quick
listened
and
to
he looked
Ming's
unhappy.
words and quickly drove
Wait
the
a
car
minute.
to a villa that
Why are you
covered a
walking
large
so
area
fast?
and looked very grand.
Lily's steps were a
The
little
entrance
shaky.
was very big
She
and
couldn't
two
keep
new
up.
iron doors that looked
Uncle
a little
Wen is
retro
still
were
there.
open from the
Did
inside.
you talk to him?
Lily
No.
drove the car
Ming's
in, and as
face
soon
was
as she
stern.
entered, she saw a big
He
front
turned to look
yard.
at Lily and
There
said,
were two flower
"That
beds
man
in the
was
front
obviously
yard.
hitting on you,
Lily
and you
parked the
smiled
car
at
in
him.
the open space
That's
next to the
Uncle
flower
Wen's
beds,
nephew,
and then
and
he
he
didn't
didn't
mean
mean
any
any
harm.
It's so
He just
beautiful."
wanted to greet me.
It was spring.
He doesn't
and the
look like
flowers
those
were in
hooligans
full bloom,
outside.
bright and beautiful.
There's such a big art
in the middle of the
association
two
there,
flower
and my
beds,
boyfriend is there
there was
too.
a wide
He
avenue.
couldn't have meant it that
Let's
way.
go in.
Ming
said
took
that?
her hand and walked
Ming's
straight
face was
inside.
cold.
Lily
I think
looked
he
at
thought
the
I
big
couldn't
and empty
see, so he
villa and
wanted
felt
to
a little
develop a
strange.
relationship with you.
It was much bigger
As he
than the
said
villa
that,
in
he
Xishan
pointed
where
at
she used to
Lily's
live.
head and gritted his
Su Qing
teeth.
came out of nowhere and
Why
shouted,
don't you use your brain
"Master
to think
O,
about
madam."
what's going on?
As he said that,
That
he
man
opened the door.
obviously had ill
As for you,
intentions
Lily,
toward you.
she was lost in
Aya,
thought
you're
when she
thinking
heard
too
the
much.
word, "Madam."
I know my own looks.
Madam?
It's
Is he calling
impossible
me?
that any
After
random man
entering,
would be
Lily
interested
found
in
that
me.
the decoration inside
Ming
was also
almost
the
couldn't
style
help
that
but
she
curse,
liked.
but he held
It
it
was
in
simple
and
and
said,
elegant.
"In any
but it
case,
had
if you see
everything
that
that
man
should
in the
be there.
future, you have
It
to
had a
stay
strong
away from
modern
him.
minimalist
Don't
style.
smile at him and
Inside
don't get
the
close
house,
to him.
it seemed that
Do
there
you
was
hear
an
me?
aromatherapy and it
Yes,
smelled
yes,
very
yes.
good.
It
It was
didn't
also
know
the
what to
jasmine
do with
fragrance
him.
that you Lily
What are we
liked
going to
very
do
much.
now?
What
We
time
will live
is
here
it?
in the future.
3 o'clock.
Do you like it?
Let's
go
go Ming
boating.
took her hand and
Ming
whispered
said
with
with
his
a
head
smile.
down. I have
Going?
been preparing for a
Lily
long
looked at
time,
his
and I
hand.
can finally
Are
move
you
in.
sure?
Well,
Is
is
this
you
also
row,
something
I'll
that
sit.
you have been preparing
Not
for
going.
several years?
Let's go.
Lily looked
Not
at
going.
him, a little
Let's go.
incredulous.
Lily
Ming
bought some
smiled but
snacks
did
and
not
went
speak.
to buy a ticket.
Looking around,
She led
he saw
Ming
that
onto the
everything
boat
had
and
been
started
branded with
rowing with
Lily's
oars.
mark.
The
Ming,
car
on
and
the
the
other
house
hand,
were
was
all
stepping
bought
on
in
the
Lily's
boat.
name. The two of them
However,
sat
there was
face
no
to
need to
face.
tell her this.
Ming was not happy.
Let's go, I will show you.
He waved
The
at her
villa
and
was
said,
divided
"Come
into
here."
two floors.
No, we
The
can't.
first floor was
The
the
boat
living
will tip
room, the
over.
kitchen, the dining
I
room,
won't.
the bathroom,
Yes.
the gym, and the balcony.
I said I won't, so
the
I
second
won't.
floor was filled with
Lily
rooms.
rolled her eyes at him.
There was a study,
If I go
a
over,
master
we'll
bedroom,
capsize
a
and die
second
together.
bedroom, and a guest room.
Shall I sit over
The
there?
place was very
As
spacious.
he spoke, he was about
Ming
to move.
pulled Lily into the
Lily
room.
jumped in
The
fright and
walk-in
shouted,
closet was
"Sit
especially
down."
large. It was comparable to the room that Lily was currently living in at Yi Chanshan's place. The room was so big that it was empty. The bathroom was twice the size of the one in the West Mountain Villa. Especially that jacuzzi, it was huge and wide. Lily looked at the huge bathtub and blushed. But she quickly lowered her head and turned her face away so that Ming wouldn't see her strangeness. Ming had already seen it. He chuckled and said, "In the future we can be happy wherever we are." Chapter 1266. The Yushio villas were famous in Kingstown. The people who could live there were either wealthy or respectable. Li Xiqing had bought a villa there a long time ago and moved in early. After returning from a trip, he stayed in the old house for a while, but not long after he returned to Yushio Villa. Su Qianxi was leading a few children to recite ancient poems in the living room. The 3 children were a little interested and recited along with her. Nanny Rong watched them from the side with a kind smile. Ding dong. The doorbell rang and the children looked over. Li Jianyue immediately got up and shouted, "Mommy, I'll go open the door." The smile on Nanny Rong's face deepened. She pushed the little girl back down and said, "I'll go." "You sit down." Li Jianyue immediately sat down again and shouted, "Thank you, Nanny Rong." "You're welcome. Ursa has to learn poetry from Mommy." "Yeah." Nanny Rong looked through the peephole and was surprised to see Ming. She quickly opened the door and shouted, "Madam, Mr. O is here." O Ming and Yu Lily walked in hand in hand. When the two of them walked in together, the children's eyes lit up when they saw them. Li Jianyue got up and ran toward O Ming shouting, "Uncle O." O Ming squatted down with a smile and reached out toward Li Jianyue, intending to catch her. But Li Jianyue stopped when she was about to reach him. She looked at Ming's hand and asked, "Uncle, is your hand not healed yet?" Ming smiled and pinched the little girl's pink cheek. "It's not that fast, but it'll be fine soon." Li Jianyue nodded and blinked her big eyes. "Uncle, you have to get better soon. Auntie, you're here too." With that, she went up and took Yu Lily's hand. She looked at the ring on Yu Lily's hand and exclaimed, "Auntie's ring is so beautiful." Yu Lily smiled and squatted down. "Thank you, Ursu." Li Jianyue smiled and pulled Yu Lily to the sofa. "Mommy, big brother, come quickly." Su Chenxi looked at the little girl from afar. It was obvious that she was trying to avoid reciting poetry. She shook her head and said, "Go and call your father out." The smile on Li Jianyue's face widened. She immediately let go of Yu Lily's hand and strode inside. But when she ran, her pink spring dress fluttered, and she shouted in a sweet childish voice, "Daddy, Daddy." The little girl's voice faded away. Li Mosen and Li Jianxian also got up and ran to the kitchen. Nanny Rong was making tea for the guests. Seeing the two boys running in, she couldn't help but ask, "What are you two doing?" Li Jianxian came over and said, "Granny Rong, give me the tea. I'll bring it over to the guest." Li Mosen said, "I'm here to get some snacks for the guests." Nanny Rong poured the tea, but she did not give it to Li Jianxian. Instead, she gave it to Li Mosen and said, "Young Master Mosen is the older brother, so he will be more careful. Young Master, you can take the snacks out later." Li Jianxian felt a little regretful, but he also nodded. "Okay." Not long after Ming and Yu Lily sat down, they heard a tender voice coming from inside. It was slowly coming out. Chapter 1268. Of course not. Ming denied it without hesitation. "I want to talk to my parents after I'm done with the matter at hand." His mother had a strong opinion of Yu Lily, so much so that even Huajin and Wen Fenglin couldn't resolve it. If this continued, Xiao Ziqing would have to think things through if she wanted to accept Yu Lily. That possibility wasn't impossible, but it was too low. Based on Xiao Ziqing's insistence over the past few days, Ming guessed that the main reason they were stuck between them now was because of Yu Lily's background. If they could find Yu Lily's biological parents, things might change. I think your father will be very angry about such a big matter. Li Xiqing had known Ming since they were young, so he was very familiar with Huojin. The uncle looked kind, but he had a bad temper. If he got angry, he might even hit someone. My father is easy to deal with, but my mother is the key. Ming sighed. Let's just let nature take its course. Su Qinxi saw that the topic had become a little heavy. She looked at Li Jianyue, who seemed to understand, and whispered, "Follow brother to the room to play." Li Jianyue blinked and nodded obediently. Then she took Li Jianxian's hand and said, "Brother, let's go inside to play." Li Jianxian had never been able to do anything with his sister. After leading Li Mosen and his sister inside, he said, "I'm going to read. You two play." Li Jianxian was happy when she heard that. She waved her hand and said, Go on. I'll play with Brother Mosen." Li Jianxian didn't care and turned to leave. Li Jianyue closed the door and said excitedly, "Brother Mosen, let's play that game." Li Mosen frowned and said reluctantly, "No, it's just the two of us. I'm always down there. It's tiring." "I don't care. If I'm down there, I'll be crushed by brother. Lie down. Hurry up." Li Jianyue urged him and pushed him toward the bed. Li Mosen was like Li Jianxian. He was helpless toward this little girl and didn't know how to comply. After thinking about it, he still lay down. Li Jianyue pushed him so that he was lying on his side and said unhappily, "You should be lying down like this." As he spoke, the little fellow climbed onto Li Mosen's body. His chubby little body was pressed against Li Mosen's. It was very meaty and very comfortable. Li Mosen asked helplessly, "Are you done?" Ursa was a little excited. She straightened her little body and shouted, "I'm done, push me down." Li Mosen leaned to the side and Li Jianyue's small fleshy body fell to the other side of the bed. The little guy's body fell down and he giggled excitedly. He shouted, Again. Li Mosen leaned over and Li Jianyue did the same. After a few times, Li Jianyue's interest did not diminish at all. Instead, she became even more excited and shouted, "Brother Mosen, let's do it again." "No, I'm so tired," Li Mosen refused. "You'll crush me to death like this." Li Jianyue pouted her pink little mouth and looked at Li Mosen with a pitiful look. She said, "It's the last time." Li Mosen looked at Ursa's little face and finally softened his heart. He warned, "It's the last time." That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.